Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to today's edition of the Game Design Variety Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Dunstan. Welcome, everybody. Hope you've had a nice weekend. As join you on Monday afternoon, early evening, morning, afternoon. Nice to see you. How was everyone's weekend? Seemed like we finally got some nice sunshine here in Prague, so could actually go outside and walk around for a bit and enjoy that, even though it gets cold pretty quickly. But it was nice to escape the confines of the apartment, as it would be. Didn't play too many games. I actually played Nagaraja, which is a two-player game designed by Bruno Cathala and Thierry Rivera. I've worked with both of the designers, and Thierry was kindly enough gave me a copy when I saw him last, and finally got it to the table. It's a really interesting kind of sort of mixture of I guess more sort of Euro mechanisms, but with some luck. You have these amazing they're not dice, they're sort of like casting sticks in beautiful sort of plastic in three different colors, like amazing components from Hurricane. And yeah, it went pretty well, although it can be a bit in your face. If you don't like a lot of confrontation, it might not be the game for you. Hey, Roland Burns, how you going? Welcome. Oh, Rory, yeah, sorry. When your photo comes up, then I recognize you, but before then. So almost solid rain here yesterday, but now pushing my kids' bikes through a muddy field, which is fun. Sounds great. I'm guessing that's because the kids at some point didn't want to have to ride through the fields. Yeah. No, it's well, I'm sorry that there was a lot of rain. We've had a bit of rain off and on, but nothing too torrential or anything like that here. So it's been pretty relaxed. Yeah. So well, thanks again for joining in the stream. I have to admit, this week after last stream being so sort of focused and having a really good idea of what I wanted to chat about, I don't have as much of an agenda this week, I guess. I think actually one thing I'd like to do is a bit of a Q&A. So I think if anybody has any questions that they want me to answer about basically anything, drop them in the chat and I'll get to them. Probably that will be, either we'll do that first or we'll do it, in more the second half of the stream or something like that. So, I mean, that's a general point. Any stream, just drop me a question in the chat and I'll do my best to answer it. But, happy to spend a bit more time going in depth into some questions. So yeah, if you've got questions about past designs, my process, anything like that, any particular games, yeah, that would be great. Might go back and delve into the old prototype folder of Doom, because I realized we actually didn't get to it in the last few streams. So, there's still however many hundred projects to get through. I think we're about 8 down and only 168 to go. So hang in there until about 2022 when I finally get through everything. I read an interesting thread on Facebook. I think it was the author of, it's Luke Laurie, who's one of the authors of Whistle Stop, a new game from Bezier, and he had put a post about how long it tends for his games to get published, from the moment he starts to the moment they're actually released. And it seemed to be about an average of 4 or 5 years per game. But also there was a little tidbit at the end of the post. He said, I think he lists maybe 4 or 5 games that have been published, and then like number of abandoned projects was something like 86 or something. And it was interesting that it's the statistic that nobody ever really talks about generally. It's the number of, the failures, I guess, quote unquote. It's not exactly like that. In academia for a while, there was definitely a trend with professors and people who've been successful. It's obviously very biased and sort of selective for success. And so I was trying to encourage professors to list like all the grants that they'd applied for but failed to get. And it might be an interesting exercise for game designers as well, like which we're doing here, to sort of show that not every game, not every idea makes it into a prototype, not every prototype makes it into a finished game, not every finished game actually gets published. I guess to normalize failure or for things not working out, and that's just a normal part of the creative process. Also listened to a bit of Board Game Design Lab. The latest episode was sort of on the creative process. The designer who's got a game on Kickstarter right now, he's a musician and game designer. It was an intern at Fantasy Flight, and sort of chatting about how how you're able to balance creative pursuits with normal life and things like that. Also, I remember, if anyone is interested, I'll be on Bez's stream on Thursday morning, 10 o'clock GMT time. So we're going to be chatting about how do you actually make a living as a game designer. I mean, and specifically trying to target not doing that as a developer or as a publisher. So I think a lot of, especially the newer people who are making a living in the industry, I'm thinking about people like Johnny Pack Canson, designer of Coloma, A Fistful of Meeples, a lot of other games. David Terzi, designer of Anachrony, a whole bunch of things. A lot of, for both of them, I think they're full-time in the industry now, but a lot of that work, as I understand, is also development work. It's not just design. And I sort of come at it the other way. I don't really do any development. And I sort of wanted to chat a little bit about how you can kind of target, as a designer, how can you make it as full-time a career as possible, and what are some of the things you might want to think about, which we'll see. It's not, people don't always talk about money very much, and I think it could be useful to sort of tell people about that, hopefully. Axulis has a question. Excellent. Start the Q&A. Thanks very much. Do you consciously mothball projects, or do they tend to fall down the priority list indefinitely? Yes, good question. I think it depends on a few factors. The first is, if it's a co-design, it depends a lot on the co-designer. It's if the co-designer is still interested in the project and is still pushing it, then things won't get put away. And for different co-designers, you have a different process for sort of deciding whether to work on something or not, or whether to stop working on it. Sometimes it's mutual. Both of you are not really feeling the game anymore, and you kind of get to a mutual point where you're like, well, we may as well, give this a break. I think it's not working for whatever reason. Sometimes I have to be sort of upfront. I think when I'm really busy with sort of ongoing projects, which I know I have to do, like if I'm, doing the last bits of development for a game that's going to be published, or working on some other project that has sort of a due date. Those are the times when sometimes other projects which I'd really want to work on, or maybe I've made an initial prototype for in a kind of a time where I had a little bit more time, they can sort of fall off, they can become mothballed just because, they do fall down the priority list, or, I just have a finite amount of time, and I can't kind of work on these projects that are a bit more free. They don't have a home yet, they don't have a publisher, there's no pressure. And I think sometimes it's probably after each iteration of a game, and I play test it. I'd like to hope that every time I make a new version of the game, I at least play it once. I try to keep to that. It doesn't always work. I try really hard, and as long as you've play tested that new iteration, I think after you've play tested it becomes pretty clear whether I think it just has to whether I have a clear idea of where it can go. From there, if I think I can make a new version, I can think about what I would change, and then it would go on the list of things to work on. And yes, maybe that will fall down the list at some point, but at least it's in my mind that I'd like to do it. But if I get up, if I go out of a playtest and, it didn't work, especially if there didn't seem to be many things in the game that I really liked, or maybe the key idea I thought about the game just doesn't work, the key hook or the key thematic element. Those are the times when you don't have a really clear idea of where to go after that. And that can lead to games being just mothballed because, you don't have a good idea of what to do with next. But it's interesting, and they don't always stay mothballed. Sometimes you come back to them, especially with co-designers. For whatever reason, co-designer might not be interested in a project, might not have a lot of time, but they might come back to me later, and that will also reignite my interest in the game. So, I think it's a mixture of both. But if I have a good idea of where to take a game, then it'll go on a list. That list at various points is pretty long. I actually don't know where my notebook is. It's my current notebook that I started in September. And I think somewhere here, yeah, I have a list of current unsigned projects, and these range from games which I'm already actively pitching to games which are literally maybe in the discussion stage. Although I think everything on this list has at least one, like has at least an initial product, like an initial version that's been made. And I'm just trying to do a very, very quick count. There's about 21 games on this list. So even if a game makes the list that it's something I'm working on, you know, I don't necessarily get around to all the games all the time, and you know, it depends. I mean, there are a couple of games on this which, yeah, I'm pitching, so obviously I'm not kind of working on them actively, but yeah, it doesn't include any, and that's not including, you know, all the kind of games I'm trying to, you know, develop that are already with a publisher. There's you know, there's that, you know, Botanic Gardens game I was talking about with Grail Games. You know, we're working on some new content for that that'll be part of the Kickstarter, hopefully, some new little mini expansions. So yeah, it just sort of depends. Yeah, it's nice to have some specifics. Yeah, I think that's the one thing I actually have to get a little bit better at, actually, is after your playtest, or not necessarily directly after playtest, but when you're having these thoughts about thinking about where it could go, definitely write down what you want to do. There's a good chance that you might, you know, you think, oh, of course I know what I want to do right now. There's a very good chance that you will have that thought, have that time to think about the game, and you won't think about it again for a few weeks. And you come back 2 weeks later and you're like, oh, what was I going to do with this game? I knew I had an idea, but I don't have it. And that's something I'd like to get a bit better at. I think just getting back to writing in my notebook, you know, if I have a page about the game, you know, I can quickly flick back and see what I was thinking. But yeah, it's something we can all get better at, I guess. Yeah, so I think again, what we might do is just dive into some old prototypes and you know, see what's in the kind of the mothballed, you know, back of my closet, so to speak. And if anyone has questions as I'm going along about either what I'm talking about or even something completely random, I'll sporadically check a chat, and you know, we can kind of have a mixture of old prototypes, Q&A kind of thing going on. Yeah, so settle back, relax, have a nice cup of tea, or you know, something. I already had my tea a bit earlier today, so I'm just on water. But yeah, so let's see if I can. Oh yeah, that works. Good. I tried to make the text a bit bigger. Hopefully it's somewhat readable, but I'll kind of highlight things as they come up. So yeah, we had just looked at this. So we're now into October 2014. I'm just trying to think of, like, it would be great to find a game that came out in, I'm going to look up like Essen 2014 games and see what comes up, what was released. Dungeon Lords came out from CGE, Alchemists. Oh yes, the Spiel 2014 preview. Let's see what things we got here. You can just get a bit of an idea of what came out. It's going to be a bit. How far am I going to have to go down to find something recognizable? Navi Pocket. Euphoria. Oh no, this is the German edition of Euphoria, so it's probably a bit earlier. Oh, Empire Engine. So this was yeah, my second ever published game came out in 2014. So yeah, this is a micro game, Planes from David Short, La Isla, if people know from Malaya games. So yeah, so it was a while ago is the takeaway point. And yeah, this game called Four Horsemen, I actually know quite well. I remember it quite well because so this is a co-design with Dave Mortimer, who he's another British designer, and it's sort of another micro game that we were. It might even have kind of, yeah. Actually, this is a really lucky little overview image. You know, it's this sort of I mean, almost pandemic-esque cooperative game, and it has this theme of like the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So they were literally four horses with different colors, and they're spreading, you know, plague, disease, etc., which are cubes. And you have to essentially, I think you had heroes, and you'd move around, and you were trying to remove cubes from the different cards. And, you know, if all the cubes were placed, a bit like Pandemic, you lost. There were interesting things to that. Yeah, I think the whole game was 18 cards. And the interesting thing is that every card not only had, you know, could be used in this grid to give you the map, but also every card had like an image of a horse or like movement of cubes. So you know, when you revealed this card, it would essentially tell you how the horses, how they're going to move. So the cards, you know, they're kind of these multi-use cards, could be used in the map, or they could be used as kind of the, you know, like the event deck, or like the card you would reveal every round, and then it would do something and kind of automate the movement or randomize the movement of certain horsemen. And we really like this idea of trying to pack as much information into like one deck that was the same, and it allowed for a lot of replayability, because obviously you would have a different subset of 9 cards that would make your map each game, and they have different abilities and things like that. And you know, it's random what's coming out of the deck. There's also some interesting ways that you can kind of balance, you know, cards which are really good for you, or you know, good for you that are when they're in the map. They can also have sort of less impactful moves for the enemy. So the idea is that, you know, if a card's is good for you that's in the map, then on average there are worse cards in the deck. So the kind of the balance of the difficulty you can kind of gauge against each other by kind of combining both good and bad elements on a single card. And the interesting thing about Four Horsemen is that the game doesn't really exist anymore. I may have a prototype somewhere. Actually, Dave, you know, found some like actual horse pieces, and he painted them up. But it actually transformed into a, you know, kind of evolved into a more classic sort of cooperative dungeon crawl game. But again, kind of keeping this core idea that there's a one deck of cards that are used in many different instances, and that some form the dungeon, others that are drawn from a deck to tell you, you know, what agents move. And that game actually still exists, which is why I kind of remember Four Horsemen. And it's been with a publisher for, you know, being considered by a publisher for actually quite a long time, probably at least 2 or 3 years. This sometimes happens, you know. I'm sometimes of the opinion that if you think a game could be a good fit with a particular publisher, that it's okay to wait that long for them to make a decision. I mean, obviously there's various kind of extenuating circumstances, but yeah, so that's kind of where the project is. And actually, we may get an answer like this month, probably in the next couple of weeks. The publisher has finally said, okay, we know we've had it for a really long time. We promise this is going to be the last time that you know, like, we're going to get you a final decision this month. I think obviously COVID has pushed back things as well. So yeah, it's kind of cool actually to come across it now. So it's been, you know, what, about a 6-year kind of journey, and that's even pre any kind of signing. So yeah, let's yeah, fingers crossed, I guess, for Dave and me. But that's Four Horsemen, and yeah, interesting to see where that came from initially. Manuel says, I think Empire Engine is super interesting. Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, it was one of the games we designed for this Good Little Games website, you know. So the restriction was 18 cards, and you could have sort of minimal basic components like a certain amount of cubes, normal cubes, or like 1 or 2 dice, or normal d6s and things like that. And Chris and I don't even know where the idea is from. I think Chris had really the key idea of these kind of programming with wheels, so that you have two gears that you're sort of manipulating these cards, which give you 2 actions each turn. So there's a bit of like kind of programming, and for, you know, each player just has 4 cards, actually, like an identical set of 4 cards, and that's the game. And we made it for 2 to 4 players because that was the limit we could make in 18 cards essentially. But you could theoretically you can actually play any number of players theoretically, as long as each player has 4 cards and you have enough cubes. Yeah, it is a really I still look back at it and I'm still quite happy with it. I think it didn't quite it didn't hit the market in the right way, because it was sort of coming out on the coattails of things like Love Letter, and it was in exactly the same packaging. It's in one of these small sort of velvet bags. You know, you might imagine the original Love Letter was in this red sort of velvet bag with cards in, and this Empire Engine was in a small brown velvet bag. yeah, and I think it was a bit of this mismatch of obviously Love Letter appealed to a very casual audience, and then you come with this. Not that the game is necessarily difficult, but it's a very different type of game. It's very thinky. It's kind of a bit of bluffing and a bit of programming, and it's maybe not the most intuitive kind of game. So I think it ultimately didn't do particularly well. The funny thing is, of course, when you get sales reports, we still get sales reports for the game, even though they basically say 0. Yeah, I'm sure there's some copies out there. It's always nice to see it. They also it also featured as a fun fact. Also featured in AEG used to do these black box kind of compendiums of like a bunch of different games that I think they would put out near Thanksgiving or something like that, or maybe it was through Gen Con. And for one year of the black boxes, they did a special Cold War edition of Empire Engine, which was kind of cool. So yeah, I've got like one copy of that as part of the greater sort of black box, which is nice. But Mayo also actually had a question, which is, sorry, and one of the rare situations where you can try the game before and after, where you can try the game before and after the publisher. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, you're referring to Empire. Yeah, exactly. So because the original print and play is still available on the Good Little Games website, you can download it even today. And of course, there's a published version. So AEG were really nice, so they didn't have any problems with us leaving it up. So yeah, you can actually see there were a few things that were developed. I don't think there were any really major rule changes as far as I remember. We added you could have this option to have sort of a player abilities and sort of say asymmetric powers and things like that. But yeah, and there was this whole kind of lore. There was like a book, like in the rules book, like in the rules book, at least half of the pages were the lore of this world. You know, I sometimes think about the kind of work that goes into building the lore of these games. That it pops up in this small game that some percentage of players will play, but then that world is never explored ever again because the game ends and there's no line. And it's interesting the kind of work that goes into creating all these little like pop-up worlds with all this lore, and then they just flicker out of existence as they go. So yeah, there are a lot of micro games. I mean, that was kind of the micro games trend, and we were trying to design games for that. I actually have Sail to India, which is another kind of early. It was a Japanese design, and from around the same time. And I still haven't played it. I really like to play it, but I can't. It doesn't play 2 players. So it still remains as it's one of these kind of classic, Japanese micro games that I'd really like to try. But yeah, but maybe it's going to come back around. I don't know. It's I don't think from what you hear, it's just hard to sell them actually, and that's I've talked about before on the stream about trying to think about different ways of distributing these kind of micro games, free print and play and things like that. So yeah, Axula was going to mention Sail to India. Yeah, it does a lot. Okay, well, I'm glad. I mean, everything I've read about it, Emmanuel, it's really inspiring design. Yeah, everything I read about it is very encouraging, actually. So I hope I can try it. Maybe I should look and see if there's some sort of 2-player variant, because weirdly enough, it doesn't seem like you absolutely need 3 players, but maybe I haven't looked at it for a little while. But oh hey Matt, how you going? Thanks for joining. Yeah, it's good to hear the Sail to India is good. Okay, so I'll have to make a renewed effort. Of course, right now it's the worst time to try it, but I'm sure I should have a look and try and hack it, I guess, together. Hey Nicholas, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining. Yeah, for those who just joined, we're interspersing Q&A with old prototypes. I should maybe I will put prototype deep dive. I wonder if I can do /Q&A. So yeah, if anyone has any questions as we're going through, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll kind of intersperse them by looking, between looking through various prototypes. We've traveled back to October 2014, and I think for the next one, this was the much vaunted. Oh no, sorry, before that. We've got the next one is called Pickpocket. Also a game I remember because this game actually did make it to a game that I actually pitched to many publishers. It was one of the first games that was a solo design, so it was just me, and it's. I feel like this is a style of game that I don't know if every every designer seems to work on one of these games. I see a lot of them published, and I suspect that a lot of designers have one in their back closet. Please let me know if you do as well, because it's one of these. I have a hand of cards. We all have a hand of cards. I'm going to play a card face down. Everyone plays one face down at the same time. We reveal it, and then there's some interaction. In this case, you were trying to steal cards from different locations. You would have a set of location cards in your hand, a set of thief cards in your hand. And you basically play one thief from one location, which is I'm sending this thief to that location, put them together face down. Everyone does the same thing. We flip them over. And of course, if you're the only person who goes to a location, then you get more of the stuff. The pickpockets had different kind of abilities. I'm just trying to think if I can see them here. You can do it, PDF. Talk amongst yourselves. Maybe I'm gonna have a bit of luck if I actually open. Yeah, okay. Oops. So of course it was your normal money, which was just worth straight points. Then you had rumors, which I think were a majority, kind of scoring thing. You had gems, which are your set collection thing with different colors. Book. Oh, okay. Yeah, these are all kind of items. So you were either collecting colors or types of items. I don't know what this was. It's you can say I obviously super thematic designer that I just grabbed symbols, whatever Greek letters were good enough for me. I didn't have to worry. I didn't care whether it fit the world or anything. And yeah, these are the location cards. So it was the blue player had a set of cards. And I'm trying to find the thieves, which apparently look like they're going to be at the bottom of the file. Yeah, so you had these thieves which had a speed and an amount of things that they could take. So if you had multiple thieves go to the same location, the quicker one would act first, but they would steal fewer things. If you're a bit slower, you get more stuff. Maybe you could steal from another opponent when you did that. You could purposely send someone really slow. I think, and the way it ended up, actually, there was a particular thief that couldn't take anything by themselves, but they would only steal from other players who went to the same location. So you were trying to sort of work out which row somebody was interested. When we look back on this kind of game, it's not particularly, it's nothing special, and you can kind of see exactly why it didn't get published, because it wasn't anything particularly special, I guess is the point. I actually wrote a sort of a pitch. Maybe I might have entered it in a design competition or something like this. Yeah, so that's I might even have a physical copy somewhere still, because it's just a card game. But I tried to make a 9-card social deduction game a bit like this. Yeah, I think it doesn't work yet. Well, never say never. But yeah, it's interesting. I feel like it's one of these mechanisms that I think there's a reason it keeps getting repeated. It's very interactive. Everyone acts at the same time, so it's a little bit quicker. Things flow very quickly. There's a lot of excitement when you have that reveal moment. It's quite easy to kind of explain how the game flows and things like this. But you can see that all the stuff attached to it is not particularly interesting at all. So yeah. Cops expansion where each player has a cop and can catch another player's thief. That is a good point. I will keep that in mind if I ever revive this game again. Nicola, the only game I played like that is Adele, the flip chit or hoity-toity. Actually, yeah, I mean, and that's perfect because I think that was probably the original inspiration for this game. Actually, I think I was looking for, but the point is that hoity-toity just does it so well and so elegantly that it's hard to when you try to mirror that, or you'd be inspired. There's not much room you can go if you still want to be a fairly simple game. So yeah, and I think this is one thing that probably reflects a little bit on how you change the designer. Like I don't think I would even ever start designing a game like this anymore. Like it would have to be so the kind of the original thought or the bit of like the quirk or the twist would have to be so good for me to even start a prototype, I think, because you just know that there are just so many games exactly like this. I think of like, there's like Eggs and Empires from Eagle Gryphon. You know, Citadels is not exactly the same, but there's like a core to that kind of everyone choosing a card and then the reveal. You know, you've got to have so much. There's got to be something so compelling, I think, for a publisher to pick up a game like this these days. So yeah. As card only game is an advantage in portability. That's true. That's true. I would have to think that, like, I wonder that Klaus Teuber, if he didn't make a card game version, I mean, it feels like, you know, these classical games, I mean, it's not Rhino Knisses, so it's not automatically, you know, 5 different versions already, but I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't already some other card game version from that time. So yeah, with more experience, you pick your battles better, so to speak. Yeah, I think you just know, it's that kind of feeling of, I think you have a better sense of, at the start of a project, what's the best case scenario that you could reach with this idea. And you get better at predicting that, or at least kind of giving it kind of boundaries. And if the kind of like absolute best case is still not that compelling, then, you know, you save a bit of time and you just kind of nip it in the bud before you spend, you know, more time prototyping. And I tend to think, actually, this is again one of these things that changes, you know, with experience. It's just, I don't think you get better at necessarily making games. You do get better at knowing what games not to work on or that aren't worth, you know, spending time on. So you just become a little bit more efficient, more than anything. I think it's just gaining time in that way, but not, when you have a good idea, it doesn't mean that necessarily it's going to be quicker that you design the game. It's just you haven't, you know, wasted your time on the other 6 projects you could have been doing at the same time. So yeah, so Pickpocket, you had a good life. It was definitely after Relic Runners, it was sort of a game that, you know, I completely designed by myself, and I got to a point where I pitched to a lot of people. So I think, you know, that was still a success, you know, and I made a prototype that I could show to other people. That's definitely not my strong point at all in terms of, you know, graphic design, as you can see. And the cards I showed, you know, that was not different to what I showed to publishers, really. I think that was pretty close to the version that I would pitch to publishers. So obviously it wasn't picked up, so maybe it's not a great example, but again, you don't need super complicated graphics or you know, it just has to be clear and playable. Yeah. Hey Rob, how you going? Welcome. How are you going? How's your weekend been? For those who came a bit later, I hope you all had a really great weekend. Anyone play anything interesting or do anything interesting completely out of games? I was, as part of this the Rob Davio talk, I think I talked about on Friday, this, you know, being a professional game designer, sort of talking about once you make game design, it changed from your hobby into your profession, you need a new hobby. So I'm in the market for a new hobby at the moment. So if anyone has good ideas for a hobby, I'm all ears. I'm almost tempted to take up knitting or something I can do when it gets dark so early and you're just stuck inside and not necessarily, you know, attached to a screen or something like that. Yeah, because I think I probably need a new hobby. Sometimes I talk to my fiance on the weekend, or she says, like, we didn't play games that much this week, and or do you want to play a game this evening? I'm like, well, I've actually been thinking about games all day. I've been emailing about them. I've been working on prototypes, and you just, you know, don't feel like playing anymore. You know, it's not. It takes a different part of your life. So yeah, looking for hobbies. Maybe that should be the other thing. Rob, didn't play anything, but I had a moderately productive session of game design work over the weekend. Oh, fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that. Is it on the Snails and Grails game with Surprise Stare? How's that going? Nicholas says music. Yeah, actually, I did used to. I played piano all through school up to when I was 18, and did a lot of exams for that and in music theory. And I played saxophone as well, actually, up to about 18. And that all stopped once I went to university for whatever reason. I still sung in choirs sometimes. And yeah, I do sometimes think that I'd like to stay back. We actually have an antique mini grand piano in our apartment, which is the owner owns it, and he says, you know, when we said, like, could we move it out because it takes a huge part of not a huge apartment, he said, well, it's probably going to be there, you know, I'll die with it still being there. So unfortunately, it's very out of tune. And there, yeah, the whole loudness thing, I don't know what you do, but yeah, maybe I should, think about taking up piano again. It might be nice with, you know, if you've got an electronic keyboard or something like that, could be fun. Rob, squirrels this time. Okay, so different game. Squirrels, but the snails going well, though slowly over the last couple of months. Yeah, I think during all this time, it's pretty important to not be too on top of yourself in terms of thinking like, what's my efficiency or how many things I'm getting done. I think that way lies madness, unfortunately, especially with the current circumstances. So I think any sort of progress is great, and just focusing on that positive is fantastic. Akusula, yeah, music is my other passion. Yes, as well. I mean, you did give it away, I think, with that guitar. I mean, of course, the great thing would be if you don't actually play guitar and that was just a red herring, and you actually play the bassoon or something, so everyone's surprised when they actually meet you. But Nicholas says, as for games, played 3 new Kramer Kieslings. Okay, great. Coal Baron, the card game, Taurus, and Evergreen. I know the first 2. I've never heard of Evergreen, actually. I really want to play. I haven't played Coal Baron, the real game. Neither have I played Coal Baron, the card game. And I am actually probably more interested in the card game. I'm always interested in these kind of Euro-y card games. For me, another game in that kind of idea is First Class, which I've played once, and I keep wanting to buy, but it's very hard to get now, and I don't want to sort of drop 80 euros on a 45-minute game that I sort of don't know whether I'm going to like or not. So that's a bit tricky. If only I suggested music because I like to play some. Oh, okay. So yeah, let us know what do you play, Nicola? Maybe we can get you can form a band through the chat or something like that. We can band together. Yeah, and make game design related songs. I don't know how much of an audience there'll be for that. So, well, it looks like the next one is the return of the grid. This is called Key Grid. I have no idea what this, and it's another one of these, like, I feel like when I open a folder and I see one file, it's a little bit like when you're on Wikipedia and you click a link and it says something like this article is a stub, feel free to expand it. So somebody sort of put a link there for something that was going to happen and then it never happened. So this one has, well, again, some mixture of characters, gaining prestige, building buildings. It feels like welcome to Eurogames Design 101 or something like that. There are resources, there are costs, there are ranks. What more do you need, I guess? Apparently you do need something more than that because I can't work out what the game is. So I actually have no idea what this is. It must have been a flight of fancy. And I guess these days I just wouldn't even make a folder. I would just write an idea which would actually describe what the game is and put that there. I was wondering if I should try and get my design notebooks at the same time and try and find the entry while I'm looking at these folders, because that actually might give a better idea. I probably did write down actually in a notebook somewhere, so that might be something to think about in the future. Although I can rarely read my old handwriting, so it might not be so interesting. Rob plays harmonica. Okay, wow. So we've got a guitar, we've got a harmonica. Nicholas still hasn't told us what we played, although he's very enthusiastic. Evergreen is from Gold Cyber. Yeah, is Gold Cyber also the people did hoity-toity, maybe? I don't know, originally. A rather frantic card-based game with an hourglass. Okay, cool. I'll have to check it out. Rory plays the banjo. Well, look, I mean, wow, there's actually quite a concentration of music players here. So yeah, we should maybe we'll have some sort of jam sometime. Or are people playing like during the lockdown? Do you jam with people over Zoom or things like that? Does that work? Aquasulus has a trailer from my game designs now, and some of them are literally just a title, not very helpful. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was saying a bit before. Like when you have an idea for an iteration, or even the first idea, I'm getting much more conscious of the fact that I know that I will forget it if I don't describe it well. And even that is a bit of a skill to sort of do it succinctly, because you don't want to write, a whole block of text necessarily, but how do you kind of capture exactly the idea that will, if you read it like a month later, that will get you in the same mental state as you were when you had that idea. So yeah, it's a skill as well to sort of realize how to kind of record that information. Nicholas, this game sketch is a stub. You can help out by expanding it. Yeah, maybe I should post random Excel spreadsheets from old prototypes. It's like take the cards. I have no idea what they do, but feel free to use them in your own designs. Yeah. Well, it's also, we could go back to the I don't know if I'm going to find it, because I actually think my actual, so I have a website, a game design website, but I fear that it actually doesn't work right now, because I kind of broke it when I tried to do something else. Yeah, I have a bad feeling I can't get it to work anymore. But I had these sort of game ideas every day that I was sort of sharing with anybody, and it could go back and share that back with the community. And that was a fun thing to try and do every I tried to basically do one a day, and I got up to like 100 or something, or 80 or something like that. Nicholas, used to play guitar and keyboards a lot. Nowadays it's more on the guitar to relieve stress. Yeah, no, that's really great. I'm glad it's useful, especially during this time. Yeah, it could be a fun way to do a jam. Yeah, I mean, maybe if there's interest in that, it could be exactly swapping unfinished design game, unfinished design swap game jam. Yeah, it's interesting actually. I think I haven't seen it necessarily. I think it could be quite cool to have a Discord where you basically set up a new channel. I don't know in Discord if you can work out to have lots and lots of channels, if this would work well, but essentially where anybody's allowed to just post, start a new channel, which is a new game idea, and then anybody can kind of riff off that. And if then you find that you want to work together on the game after that, and you have a new co-design, or even if you just find some way, it could be an interesting way to kind of to just noodle away at that or something like that. It could be fun. I think seems to be some interest in design swaps or game jams or something like that. Yeah. It's a lot harder to collaborate at the moment. Yeah. I was also thinking to set up anyway a Discord connected to this stream, or whatever the community around it. Could be a fun way to. Yeah, I think I'm always for like sharing ideas. If there's no point. I think you have well, at least I have no problem with we all have so many ideas, and you never know when actually, saying an idea, someone else will see something immediately in that you didn't see, but it's the combination of the original idea and that new insight which actually makes it into a new project, like a goer really quickly. So yeah, I'll definitely I will get around to doing it. I feel like, I don't know if you all have the same feeling, that we're all drowning in Discords at the moment. So I think that was my initial reticence. And maybe there is a Discord like this already. I don't know if anyone knows of something that's really focused on game design in particular, and kind of free exchange of ideas. I think Discord could be like a good sort of platform for that sort of thing. So yeah, should look into that. Axel's good at signing up to Discords and then looking at them again. Yeah, I think that's the problem, isn't it? That there's lots of interesting things happening, but I also haven't quite worked out the kind of notification system with Discord. It always feels like it's giving me too many or too few. Like for some channels, I wish I had more, or I don't see the things that would be interesting. But for other channels, you just get so many notifications sometimes. So I guess it just depends. Maybe there are ways to sort of moderate that, or to think about how you use the kind of everyone kind of comment and things like that. Rob, I'm interested in puffins wearing hats. I have no idea with what this. It's not a euphemism for anything, I hope. Yeah, I'm always interested in puffins wearing hats. Sounds delightful. Manuel finds Discord really overwhelming. Yeah, it feels like demands so much time and attention. Yeah, I think it's funny because I feel like Slack. I have a lot easier time with Slack. I guess the thing with Slack, of course, is you can only see one channel at a time, so you don't have this kind of noise from all the channels necessarily. With the Discord, all your channels are automatically there. But I feel like Slack, for whatever reason, or maybe it's the people who use it, are much better at kind of realizing when you should tag somebody to get them to see something versus, and having really clear channels, and you kind of get used to seeing certain channels. But yeah, it's hard to kind of like keep up with it, I guess. Nicholas says, on the Buttershy server, there's a channel called Pitch Tag. People can randomly post a prompt and others would chip in with concept, mostly for fun. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool. Okay. Yeah, because I've definitely seen stuff like that on like Daniel Solis used to do that on Twitter. Like this was quite a while ago, where yeah, exactly, you would start with a quick tweet about something, and you know, and you keep adding to that. But I think something like that, and it's just, I think it would be interesting if you had that, yeah, that idea that you can do it if you're interested, but also I think there are enough sort of like-minded people in the community who are thankfully quite generous, or at least have that same ethos of like, if we just share lots of things, that helps us make great things. And maybe, you know, you're not going to make exactly that idea, but you'll be helped on some other ideas. So it's sort of, you know, we all, a bit like playtesting, right? You kind of reciprocate. If you give ideas, hopefully other people give ideas to you, and we all end up ahead. So yeah, it could be interesting. Yeah, a manageable Discord. Yeah, so maybe I just have to learn a little bit about how Discords work, and yeah, there's a lot of Discords. Game Changer is learning you can make folders with the servers on the left. Oh, okay, interesting. Do they clump together sort of notifications or something if you have things in a folder? Yeah. Anyway, something to think about. Yeah. So we can round off 2014, I guess. We got. We'll see what maybe we'll get through one or two and see where that goes. This is Theme Park. Feel like another theme which I perpetually come back to. I think this won't be the only folder that has some sort of theme park themed game in it that I feel like I was always trying to make, because it felt like, you know, maybe back at this time there wasn't the theme park game out there that you felt like, you know, and obviously Roller Coaster Tycoon and Theme Park World, like the one that was from the same team as Theme Hospital and things like that. And you felt, you know, I at least felt that there was this hole in the market, or that you hadn't had the kind of the best port into tabletop. I mean, of course, now you have a lot more. There was, you know, they just had Meeple Land come out from Blue Orange. There's Unfair from Good Games Publishing. There's, you know, there's really a lot, you know, all up and down the spectrum of complexity. So I think I've missed the boat, is the point. And actually, interestingly, this is a co-design with Sebastian Bleasdale of On the Underground, Keyflower fame. Really, really lovely guy. Really fantastic game designer, and actually, you know, much better. Like certain like professionalism. Like he you know, I think he writes really great rules. And, you know, he did all these prototypes in terms of like really clear iconography and sort of layout, and I think we share a little bit of the same sense of like, we're not too worried about making absolutely beautiful prototypes, but you know, they're functional, and you know, all the cards have themes, they have little icons on them. I mean, interestingly enough, this game in the end is not. It was essentially a drafting game. So you draft cards, and cards you could add to. You could put cards together to make attractions, and then you were also trying to attract visitors, because there were visitors in a queue, and they wanted particular symbols, and you could advertise for them, like, you know, to attract them towards your park. You know, all sort of stuff that's not too, you know, like, I guess it seems pretty obvious in retrospect. And I think something like Unfair does this, you know, it's very close to this, that they had cards that you essentially combine, and having similarly themed park rides, or you'd be essentially adding more and more icons to a particular attraction. And this one was finished, and we pitched it to a lot of people, a lot of publishers. Never really got there, unfortunately. I do think I have a copy of it somewhere still, or maybe like some bare bones prototype. And we sort of stuck with it for quite a while. You know, a lot of the design work was done over like, you know, 3 or 4 months, but yeah, we just never kind of got there. And that, yeah, I guess there aren't so many games. I'm trying to think kind of what the percentage of games are that reach this point with our pitch and they just never find a home, and you kind of sort of give up at some point. Yeah, I mean, it's in the kind of 20 or 30 odd games these days, I think. But yeah, another one that kind of got finished but didn't make it there. But I think this was a much better idea than something like the Pickpocket game, for example. I'm much more happy with it, but we never kind of nailed it was a bit too. In the end, it was just a bit too complicated. You know, you had a lot of cards with different powers and things, and I think you wanted a bit of a lighter game. I think we had a publisher who looked at it. They were like, "We like the game, but it just doesn't match the theme, you know, and that tells again you have to, you know, the experience you give in the gameplay has to match the kind of like the complexity of the theme as well. So people who play theme park games want something a bit lighter or a little bit funner, and this wasn't really doing that. So yeah. Yeah, back to. Sorry, I've been missing a few of the chat. Henry Audubon has been tweeting some fun game mechanic ideas. Yeah, I was showing that off on Friday, actually, in the kind of the free resources, game design resources, and yeah, I really love. I love what he's doing. I love the kind of these sketches that he put. You know, it's very visual. I'm not visual really. I have to write everything down, but in Twitter, it's so much more compelling just to see an image, and you get a much better idea of the game design. You know, the idea from that much more quickly. Then it says, is there a game design forum you recommend? The current social networks are too noisy and things get lost all the time. Yeah, I mean, I think actually no, I don't know if there really is a game design forum that I regularly frequent. For me, like board game design, like BGDF, is interesting, but it feels a little bit dated now. I don't know really if there's much of a community there. Board Game Geek is I think it's interesting if you find your way into a particular sort of niche of that. So you know, and Rob Harper, for example, like a good example, chime in, you know, with these kind of like design challenges or the design, you know, the 24-hour design contests and things. I think if you find like a good community around a particular idea, then those particular forums are quite good. And I get, you know, I get that there's quite a bit of camaraderie there, but if you're not into that particular niche, yeah, I don't know actually. I guess you know, it's trying to follow the right people, not the right people, but people who have interesting takes on Twitter or things like that. I really haven't. Maybe it's actually looking at the discords of some of these, you know, podcasts. You know, like the Game Design Roundtable. I know has a Discord, or yeah, other kind of communities like that. You know, could be interesting, but I personally haven't really looked into them. And as much as, you know, we sort of talk about, oh, it would be great to set up another Discord. Exactly. I just fear that it's yet another thing that is just an extra bit of noise. But maybe something like through this is not too bad. You know, I guess if you're willing to sit through an hour of some guy rambling about game design, maybe you sort of passed the test that, you know, you'll be well suited to something like a Discord, or like with this kind of community. I think, you know, just like playtesting, it's about finding the right community ultimately. I guess that's the internet in a nutshell, isn't it? But no, the short answer, after I've given a much longer answer, is no, I haven't found a game design forum I recommend. I guess that's why I'm interested in potentially making one, but I definitely am somewhat a little bit reticent because, yeah, for all the reasons that there is all this noise, and it's always, I guess the other thing is it's also tricky, like the anonymity of the internet versus, you know, there's something very different about a game jam, even when it's, say, with people you don't know, but they're kind of present in the same space. It's very different to trying to interact with people you don't know and never met on the internet. And I don't know if you can always get through that in a way. It sort of changes the perspective a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. It also depends what you want from these communities. And I have to admit, I don't know what I would want from such a community, because I'm obviously in a very different position to maybe someone who's starting out or working on a game and wants advice. I'm very happy to give advice, but, you know, so I'm happy to kind of give to that community. But, you know, what you have to also kind of be getting something out of it, not because I demand it, but otherwise, you know, you just are not as interested. You won't keep going back. So yeah, it's tricky. Man says in Discord, I always feel like I just missed the chance to comment on the conversation. Yeah, it does move quite quickly, and in a way, it's not like a forum, is it? It feels still very temporal. Like you want multiple people there at the same time. I mean, that being said, I really like the Discord bit of that. Like, you can just jump into chat, and so you can, you know, change it from this kind of asynchronous experience to something where you're actually talking with each other. And then that feels much more natural, and that can be quite nice. And in terms of like managing collaborations, it's great. You know, when you only have one or two people, or you know, a small group in a particular Discord server, then that feels really great. But yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. I don't think there's any one really great answer. Yeah. I did want to get back. I wanted to do one more because I can. It's I don't know if it's a high point or a low point for sort of the last prototype to the last sort of old prototype to look at while we're on it because I think we're getting up to the hour. I have had this idea for a very 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 long time, and this is my first share with the community. If anyone knows how they can make it, or you have to tell me if it's just too weird because I think it's really cool. I want to make a 2-player fighting game, probably like a card fighting game, something like, think like Dice Throne, or think, I don't know, any of these kind of 2-player games where you pick a character, it's cool, it's everything's asymmetric to the other player, and it's 1v1, and you put 6 characters in the box or whatever. But the theme I really really wanted was where you have historical figures. And I was actually originally thinking mainly authors that would be fighting each other, but it was this idea that it was a fight to be remembered. So, you would have like Dante versus Edgar Allan Poe, and they would be fighting with the creations, their literary creations. Like they'd kind of be dreaming these things into life, that they will fight each other. And, if Dante defeated Edgar Allan Poe, that's basically making Poe's become, has been lost to history. We've forgotten him and his work. So that's kind of overall kind of pitch. And so like Dante would be like a red mage in magic, because it's all fire and brimstone. So you have he's raining fireballs on everyone, whereas Poe is just would summon all these ravens, and he'd sort of make the other person despair. So it'd be like a prison kind of style. So you sort of bring out these. I think like the underlying flavor of these different authors. There was like a Kafka character who would just like do completely random, obtuse things and would try and win the game in a completely different way. He wouldn't even be fighting or anything like that. Rob says like epic. Yeah. Actually, that's a good point. Like epic rap battles of history. I love that. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's this idea of like bringing 2 people together who wouldn't have been together in history, and I love the kind of like when. It was just a really creative way to like think, I'm going to make a deck around X. So like when you had a deck, say around Shakespeare, it was all about combos because you would try to get particular characters. So you'd have to get Romeo and Juliet together and then they'd do something amazing. I don't know Dead Poet Rap Battle, but I guess so. Yeah, probably something like that. And most people I talk to about it is like, that's super weird. Like that is, that would never work. And actually, it looks like the folder is completely empty, so that was useful. I know that I've revisited, like this idea was originally from 2015, and I know I was not even that, like fairly recently, at least last year, talking to it about someone. So it's one of these ideas that, there are a few ideas that aren't mothballed, they're in my head, and I know that I'd love to do them sometime, but for whatever reason, or maybe I've had a run at them too many times that I'm slightly reticent to try it again. I think there is probably later on another version of it somewhere because, oh yeah, here we go. Author, where are we? And this is why my kind of like how I name things is a bit chaotic because here, Author Fight Club. So actually, I think I started reworking on it with Theo, and you've got like spawning pits and tortures and devil's fires for Dante. You've got Shakespeare, which you're trying to get people together. Like Juliet deals damage if Romeo's in play, but at the end of the turn she's destroyed. So it was sort of fun trying to bring these authors and their works into. And I guess the other thing is there was a part of me thinking on like Kickstarter, like the look could be amazing, and it's targeting. But I think it's that again that possibly that mismatch if you're trying to attract people interested in kind of literary kind of figures, but then you give them like quite a kind of CCG-esque kind of battler. Maybe that's a bit too much. It needs to be something a bit simpler. Shakespeare, using my skill and my grammar, my talent with grammar, kick your ass in iambic pentameter. Is that from Epic Rap Battles or something like that? Yeah. You can make up half of the fighters as they have been forgotten by history. Yeah, exactly. So. And then there was also a part of me that like I'm a scientist, so I would love to have like scientist battles. There was a game I think on Kickstarter last year that was different scientists sort of battling or trying to have discoveries or something like that. So it's yeah. So if anyone knows where to take that, I don't know if we'll come back to it. It's actually, we didn't. Yeah, this is 2019, so it's like a year and a half ago. I think Theo and I just started working on other things, and this one just kind of fell by the wayside. Yeah, Tesla vs Edison. Yeah, I mean that game. I think Tesla vs Edison is much more historical, right? Like it's yeah. I guess I'm always a bit like epic rap battles. It's I love bringing choosing to like a pair of people that's just completely asynchronous with each other and this sort of imagined history, I guess. Yeah. So well, we got through quite a few. How many did we do in then? 1, 2. We got through five failed prototypes. What was the percentage? We had 2 that were finished and pitched but never sold. 1 that is in some form still in the pipeline and may get signed, and then 2 which had not many details, but certainly didn't make it to a finished kind of product. So you're sort of a 40-40-20 split of never finished but unsigned and maybe signed. So if anyone's keeping count, I don't know. I guess there'll be maybe I'll end up having with a certain statistic which I'll track over time. But yeah, so I don't know if anyone has any final questions. I probably will wrap up in, I don't know, like 5 minutes or something like that, as we're kind of past the hour. So yeah, any final questions, or if you have ideas about what you'd love me to kind of cover on future streams. I've just locked in my first interview. We're just trying to determine the date, but I will be interviewing Wolfgang Lübke, who is one of the main developers and like game spotters for Cosmos in Germany. So he's been doing it for decades for Cosmos, and we've worked together on different games. I've been pitching to him for a long time now, 8 or 9 years. So he'll be coming on in December, one of the Mondays in December, and I'm going to try and ask him, all sorts of things about his experience developing games and stories around that. So hopefully that'll be useful for people. And I'm hoping to get more, developers on, because I think that would be super interesting. And from Daniel Solis joining us last week on Friday, he said he was also interested in coming on. So I think I'd love to hear from him in terms of game design process and different ways of publishing games. And as an art director, I think is also another really interesting perspective. Yeah, so I guess until then, thank you very much all for joining. As always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for all your comments and activity in the chat. It's sort of, as always, it's nice to kind of feel like you're having a bit of a conversation, and there's a nice little bit of community around that. So thank you very much, and I hope you all have a fantastic week. Play some great games if you get the chance. Hope work and everything else is good, and I'll be back on Friday. As always, if you ever want to get in touch with me or want to suggest things for the stream or anything like that, you can catch me on @WiseGoldfish on Twitter, and I am putting all these captures of the streams on YouTube because I think on Twitch they only hang around for like 1 or 2 weeks or something like that. So I'm also MT Dunstan on YouTube, I think, or maybe not. I'll have to check that. But yeah, have a check that out if you want to catch up with the streams. So with that, thank you all. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you again on Friday. Cheers. See you all later.